I'm glad to be here again, and I'm grateful to Reverend Michael Wangel and the other elders of Zen Center for giving me this opportunity to be with you and to talk on the subject of Abhidhamma, which is my favorite subject. As Michael said, I gave some talks on Abhidhamma last year, and then we stopped, and we intended to resume the talks soon, but I got sick, and so I had to be hospitalized, and then I want to take rest, and so I postponed until today. And since it has been nearly a year I gave those talks, although there are some people here who are at the talks last year. Many of those may have forgotten what I talked last year. So this time my talks, I call them lectures, my talks, some of my talks will be the repetition of the talks I gave last year, but they will be better organized. And also, this time you will not be in the dark what I'm going to talk about, because the handouts will be given to you 1 week in advance, and please bring the handouts when you come to the class. And also, I'm afraid I will have to ask you to do some reading before coming to the class if you are going to take the whole course. So there will be reading assignments beginning with next lecture, and I really want you to read those assignments. And please do not be afraid when you see. Please read pages 20 to 40 or something like that, because we'll be using the manual of Abhidhamma as a reference book, and I'd like you to read that book, at least the references I give. And if it is said that you are to read from page 20 to 40, in fact, you will not have to read 20 pages, because there are some pages where you find Pali passages, and you can skip them. So actually, you will be reading about 2/3 of the pages. I think that way you will have the better understanding of the talk, and before coming to the class, you know what you get from the talk, what subject the talk will be on, and so on. Now, the Abhidhamma I'm going to talk about is the Theravada Abhidhamma. You know, there are two major divisions of Buddhism, Theravada and Mahayana, and each has its own Abhidhamma. So I belong to the Theravada Buddhism, and so what I talk will be about the Abhidhamma taught in Theravada tradition. Some people say Abhidhamma is interesting, and some say it is dull, uninteresting. And Sayadaw Utitila, a Burmese monk, whom I will be quoting today, wrote that Abhidhamma is very interesting to thinking people or something. So let us see whether Abhidhamma is really interesting or not. I want you to close your eyes and focus your mind on the breath and try to be mindful of the in-breath and out-breath as it comes and goes. So I want you to do three pairs of in-breath and out-breath. Try to be really mindful of the in-breath and out-breath as they come and go. Are you able to concentrate fully on the breath? Or are you thinking of something else? Some thoughts come to you. What is this man doing? We are supposed to study Abhidhamma, now he's making us practice meditation or something like that. I want to show you that, or I want to let you know that you can think of many things even in a very short time. So the breath lasts about 4 or 5 seconds, one breath, in breath or out breath. Even during these 4 or 5 seconds, you can think of many things. Many thoughts come to you and go. Is it possible? It is, because it has happened to us. It has happened to you, happened to me, happened to everybody. Can thoughts be so fast, so quick? Abhidhamma says yes. According to Abhidhamma, thought moments, billions of thought moments, can come and go in a fraction of a second. Since in a fraction of a second, billions of thought moments can come and go, we can have a lot of thoughts in one in-breath or in one out-breath and so on. So Abhidhamma can explain what we experience, but what we do not really understand or what we are not aware of. And there are many other things Abhidhamma can explain, things in our daily life. And also Abhidhamma is of practical value. Suppose on your way here, you saw something ugly or you saw something bad. What would have been your response to that? Normally, your response would be with anger or some kind of, I don't know what to say, displeasure, because you saw something which is unpleasant. And you may be blaming it on others. Why do they have this kind of unpleasant thing on the road so that all people can see and so on? Or you may be blaming on the vehicle or on anything except you. But if you know Abhidhamma, then you know that you are seeing the ugly object, you are seeing the displeasurable object is a kind of consciousness which is the result of your past karma. In other words, you did something bad in the past, and so as a result, you get this seeing consciousness in you, seeing the ugly thing, seeing the unpleasant thing. So you are not to blame on anything but yourself, because it was you who did something in the past, and now it is you who is getting the result of the past bad karma. So when we understand Abhidhamma this way, we can accept things with equanimity, whether they are good or bad, whether you are successful or you are failure, you can just accept it as with equanimity, because everything you experience in this life is the result of what you did in the past. So it is of practical value of Abhidhamma. And the knowledge of Abhidhamma is very helpful when you practice meditation. We'll come to that later. So now let us go to the first lecture. The plan of lectures is just a plan and just let you know what you are to expect from the lectures. So there are 12 lectures this time. And the first lecture, please look at the first lecture. There are two major divisions of Buddhism nowadays. So this lecture is going to be an introductory lecture, making you get acquainted with Abhidhamma. And before going right into Abhidhamma, a background knowledge or historical background knowledge of Abhidhamma is, I think, helpful, if not essential. So there are two major divisions of Buddhism nowadays. One is Theravada or Southern Buddhism, and the other is Mahayana or Northern Buddhism. And Theravada Buddhism can be found now in Sri Lanka, Burma, Thailand, Cambodia, and Laos, and also now in the West. Initially, it spread towards southern countries like Sri Lanka, Burma, Thailand, and so on. Therefore, it is conveniently called Southern Buddhism. And Mahayana Buddhism is a branch or a later development in Buddhism, and it spread towards northern countries. I mean, when I say south and north, I mean from India. This talking from the middle of India. So Mahayana Buddhism spread towards northern countries like Nepal, Tibet, Mongolia, China, Korea, Japan. So it is conveniently called Northern Buddhism. So these are the two major divisions of Buddhism nowadays, and there are many subdivisions, especially in Mahayana Buddhism. So the Abhidhamma we are going to study this class is Abhidhamma according to Theravada tradition. Now, how Buddha's teachings were recorded and handed down. Now, when Buddha taught, he just spoke. He did not write any books. Actually, there were no books at his time. Maybe materials for books were very difficult to obtain, and so there was no tradition of writing down on books. So Buddha spoke, and his teachings, his discourses, were remembered by his disciples, or learnt by heart by his disciples. And he taught for 45 years, and immediately after his death, the surviving disciples met together and decided to hold a council. And so the first Buddhist council was held about 3 months after the death of the Buddha. And at that council, all the teachings of the Buddha were collected and scrutinized. And when the 500 arahants were satisfied that the teaching, a certain teaching was authentic, then they show their acceptance by reciting it in unison. So the 500 monks recited this sutta, and this sutta became the authentic teachings of the Buddha. So in this way, all the Buddha's teachings were collected, scrutinized, and accepted as his authentic teachings. About 100 years after the death of the Buddha, there was a split in the Sangha, in the community of monks. You know, when there are many people, then opinion came to differ, and so there were some disputes or whatever, and so there was a split in the Sangha. The split concerned mostly some disciplinary rules of monks. So the monks who belong to the Theravada tradition or Theravada group held a second council at that time. So the teachings handed down to them by oral tradition from teacher to pupil were reaffirmed at the second council and accepted as authentic teachings of the Buddha. And then about at the time of King Asoka, there was another council, the third council, 234 years after the death of the Buddha. During the time of King Asoka, there was another council, and that was called the Third Buddhist Council. Again, there were many sects at that time. According to our records, there were more than 18 different Buddhist sects or Buddhist schools, maybe disputing with each other. And so the original Sangha, the group of original Sangha, held a meeting with the support of King Asoka of India. And that was the Third Buddhist Council. So these three Buddhist councils were accepted both by Theravada tradition and Mahayana tradition. After the Third Council, King Asoka sent missionaries to other countries, and one group was sent to Sri Lanka. And the head of that group, the Venerable Mahinda, converted the king there and also converted the people to Buddhism. And so Buddhism was established in Sri Lanka from that time and spread to the other parts of the island. Now, about the 1st century BC, there was a great rebellion in Sri Lanka, and so monks have to fled to some other place. And after that rebellion, I cannot go into details because I have to cover all this in 1 hour. I'll give you references if you are interested in knowing more about these councils. So at that time, the monks who had carried the teachings orally thought that in the future monks would not be able to keep them intact. So they decided to write down the teachings of the Buddha on palm leaves. And so they met at a place which is near modern Kandy. It is called Aluvihara. And then they wrote down the teachings on the palm leaves. And it is about the 1st century BC, or according to our reckoning, about 450 years after the death of the Buddha. And then Buddhism, King Asoka sent missionaries to other countries too, and we Burmese believe that one group, headed by Sona and Odara, reached Lower Burma and established Buddhism there. And in the 11th century, Buddhism, which had been flourishing in Lower Burma, was brought to Upper Burma. You may have heard of the city Bagan. It is not pagan, but Bagan. It is spelled Pagan. So at the city of Bagan, at that time, a king named Anorata was reigning. And he brought Theravada Buddhism and also the Tipitaka and all from Lower Burma to Upper Burma. And so the whole of Burma became a predominantly Theravada Buddhist country from that time. And Buddhism continued to flourish in Burma until the present time.